This is Ben Television News Roundup, a compilation of the stories in the weekend. I'm Tunde Alabi. Thank you for being part of the program today. Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn has promised an increase in living wage if elected the Prime Minister in the next election. The Labour leader who was speaking at the Durham's Miners Gala noted that 6 million British workers earn less than the living wage. He condemned the government policy on public sector pay cap.
Unity is strength, solidarity is important, solidarity is vital. In modern Britain today, one of the wealthiest countries in the world, the 5th richest country in the world, 6 million of our fellow citizens are earning less than the living wage. Not right, not necessary. We will bring in a living wage of £10 an hour as per the TUC recommendation. And NHS workers, so quickly praised by every Tory minister whenever anything goes wrong, and I'm sure they're utterly charming to them whenever they go to the GP or to the hospital, have very generously taken a 14% cut in their wages in the past 7 years due to the public sector pay cap. And when the vote came in Parliament on the public sector pay cap, where were all those Tories and all their crocodile tears? Voting to keep the cap, voting to continue the suppression of public sector wages. In the general election campaign that's just been concluded, the Labour vote went up by 3 million. The biggest increase in the Labour vote at any time since before I was born. Indeed, the biggest since 1945. And that didn't happen because of the kindness of the press barons. It happened because of the decency and generosity of ordinary people all across this country who saw the need to do things differently and better. Durham, thank you very much. Durham, stay together. Durham, in solidarity. Thank you.
Leader of the Liberal Democrats, Vince Cable, has proposed a second option for British voters to enable them decide whether they wish to accept the outcome of the Brexit negotiation with the EU when it is finalized by the government. Speaking after he became the Liberal leader of the Liberal Democrats, Mr. Cable said that he was worried that the government might end up with no deal or a bad deal.
I fear we're heading for a disastrous outcome. These negotiations are now being led by a government that is dysfunctional, it's disorganised, it's disunited. Their negotiating strategy, if we get beyond the anodyne phrase about Brexit means Brexit, was essentially based on Theresa May's Lancaster House speech, which was made at a time very different from now, when the complexities were not understood and when she had serious political authority, which has gone. And what I think will now happen is that we will be offered a combination of a good deal, a bad deal, or a no deal at all, crashing out of the European Union with all the costs associated with that. And the Liberal Democrat response to this, I think, is twofold and absolutely clear. First of all, we want to work with like-minded people in other parties and none to save, to reinforce those aspects of the European project which are so important to us as a country. The first is the single market and its 4 freedoms. Let's not forget that this is not something that was imposed upon the UK by the European Commission. It was a British project designed by a British Prime Minister, Mrs. Thatcher originally, to serve British interests, including free trade in services. And then there's the Customs Union, which, as I know because I presided over the fortunes of British manufacturing industry for 5 years, is absolutely fundamental to the business model of what remains, and it's often very high quality, but what remains of our manufacturing industry. And then there's the research collaboration, which is crucial to the future of our universities, and indeed very specific areas like atomic cooperation through Euratom. And then there's those areas of common ground, like dealing with global threats to the environment, climate change, dealing with issues of international security. Those are the aspects of Europe that we must fight to keep. But I'm actually not pessimistic. I don't believe actually that this will be delivered. I think in practice, we're faced with a much more disastrous outcome of crashing out of the European Union. And what we now need is an exit from Brexit. And the exit from Brexit comes as a result of the policy that we have adopted, which is that we must consult the British public at the end of the process to put to them the choice: do you wish to accept what is coming down the track, jumping off a cliff and hoping that there's a tree to catch you? Or do we want to stay within the European Union, and making it absolutely clear that that option is still available? Now, how people decide will depend to a great deal, I think, on what's happening to the economy over the next year or two. And the outlook isn't great. I think there is actually a deeper problem about the way in which the economic debate has evolved. I first got into Parliament 20 years ago, and I spent much of that time debating with people like Ed Balls and Gordon Brown, George Osborne, Ken Clarke. Now, whatever your tribal feelings, these are serious people who took economic policy seriously because they realized that economic competence determines people's living standards, determines our ability to fund our health service, our schools, our police, and the rest of it. And what has happened in the last 2 years is that that's gone away.
US President Donald Trump has praised his government policy to institute Hire America, Buy America, and removing regulations that are counterproductive to investors. President Trump was speaking at the White House when he hosted Foxconn, a manufacturing company that will be investing $10 billion in LCD manufacturing in the country.
Foxconn will invest in southeast Wisconsin, while a larger facility is constructed over the coming years. And that facility is currently under negotiation. It will be about the biggest there is anywhere. The company's initial investment of more than $10 billion will create 3,000 jobs at a minimum, with the potential for up to 13,000 jobs in the very near future. The construction of this facility represents the return of LCD, electronics, and electronic manufacturing to the United States, the country that we love. That's where we want our jobs. To make such an incredible investment, Chairman Goh put his faith and confidence in the future of the American economy. In other words, if I didn't get elected, he definitely would not be spending $10 billion. His great company has seen you see exactly what I'm saying, our administration's work to remove job-killing regulations. He's been watching. To institute Buy American and Hire American, and all of those policies, and to pursue the steps necessary to revitalize American industry, including repealing and replacing Obamacare. We better get that done, fellas, please. Mike, we need that so badly. Cutting taxes, fixing our trade deals, and rebuilding our infrastructure. We'll be submitting an infrastructure bill in the not very distant future. We're going to be submitting a tax bill in the very near future. When this investment is complete, Foxconn has the potential to create more manufacturing jobs than we've seen in many, many decades. Chairman Goh, I thank you for your investment in the American worker. They appreciate it. They will not let you down. They never let us down. There is nobody like the American worker. Terry Goh told me that he believes in America, and he really believes in America. And that as a great entrepreneur, one of the greatest in the world, by the way, he won't say it, but I'll say it, one of the great entrepreneurs of the world, he has a real bond with the administration and with Americans. Foxconn joins a growing list of industry leaders who understand that America's capabilities are limitless and that America's workers are unmatched and that America's most prosperous days are just ahead. We are going to have some very, very magnificent decades.
Also, U.S. President Donald Trump's announcement banning transgender people from serving in the U.S. military has provoked outrage from advocacy groups and a number of Republicans, Democrat lawmakers. Former President Obama's administration made a policy to permit transgender people to serve in the U.S. military.
President Trump surprised many by making a major military policy announcement Wednesday morning on Twitter, saying that transgender individuals will no longer be allowed to serve in any capacity in the U.S. military. White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders was asked why the president is changing course.
The president's expressed concern since this Obama policy came into effect, but he's also voiced that this is a very expensive and disruptive policy, and based on consultation that he's had with his national security team, came to the conclusion that it erodes military readiness and unit cohesion.
The decision came a day ahead of a deadline for the military to update its medical regulations to accommodate transgender service members. Some U.S. lawmakers from both parties were taken aback.
Well, my attitude is they're human beings. They have every right to. And I don't see any problem with that.
The rulings of the court have been clear in terms of the rights of transgender Americans. And I believe that it's important that we bring them into the military as they wish to serve this nation and do it in a way consistent with national security.
Transgender rights activists said the announcement is a huge setback.
When the ban against gay and lesbian members was lifted in 2016, only last year, the United States joined 18 other countries, including our close allies, Australia, Canada, England, and Israel, in allowing transgender people to serve openly. It was an incredible moment for equality in our nation's history.
Joanne Horton is an openly transgender veteran of World War II.
I never knew any other transgender women when I was in service because, like me, they probably all thought they were the only one like that. Today, it's a little different. I know a great many of transgender women who served in Korea and the swamps of Vietnam. Now, many TGs are not good enough to face death and perhaps die for their country, but not good enough to be who they are.
The White House could not say how the ban will affect active transgender service members, but says it will work with the Defense Department to implement the ban lawfully.
Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump has embarked on a campaign rally style to show up support for his administration despite a dwindling opinion poll showing he is the most unpopular president in U.S.'s recent time.
Donald Trump in campaign mode in Youngstown, Ohio, far from the political swirl of Washington.
No president has done anywhere near what we've done in his first 6 months. Not even close.
Trump enjoys feeding off the energy of supporters who have remained loyal, no matter how low he dips in national polls, a visual message for his critics. For the moment, though, Trump's agenda has stalled. The Senate debate on health care is uncertain, and so is the timetable for when Congress might tackle tax reform or infrastructure spending. Critics have slammed the president's Twitter habit as a distraction, and Trump has been quick to fire back.
Sometimes they say he doesn't act presidential. With the exception of the late, great Abraham Lincoln, I can be more presidential than any president that's ever held this office. That I can tell you.
Trump's style is very different from his predecessors, says analyst Dan Mahaffey.
He's trying to gin up the crowd at rallies, to be more boisterous. He sees it as a popularity and media presence.
Democrats fear that Trump's Twitter rants targeting Attorney General Jeff Sessions signal his desire to end the investigation into possible collusion with Russia in last year's election. Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer.
Many Americans must be wondering if the president is trying to pry open the office of Attorney General to appoint someone during the August recess who will fire Special Counsel Mueller and shut down the Russian investigation.
So far, the Russia probe seems to have had little impact on his supporters. But Trump's focus on pleasing his base could limit his success down the road, says Dan Mahaffey.
He has made no attempts really to push beyond his base of support, and he's actually doubled down on media like Fox News or Breitbart, outlets that speak directly to people who are conservative or want conservative-leaning news.
Fascist America! Fascist America!
Despite his critics, Trump appears determined to stay the course, says William Galston.
Mr. Trump is a unique president. We've never had anybody in the Oval Office quite like him before. If you want to have a 40% approval rating, then just imitate Mr. Trump. If you'd like a governing majority, then you may want to choose a different course.
Recent polls showed Trump's approval rating at 36%, a historical low for a president 6 months into his term.
Experts at the Paris Conference on HIV/AIDS have expressed concerns that the continued global cuts to funding for HIV drug may affect the progress that have been made so far in the war against HIV that causes AIDS.
It took 3 decades from the appearance of the first drug for slowing the onset of AIDS to today's drug cocktails that save many of the infected patients from what was inevitable death. The conference on AIDS, held this week in Paris, reflected optimism about new treatments and concern about proposed cuts in funding, especially by the U.S. government.
Mais je veux rappeler qu'il manque aujourd'hui 7 milliards de dollars par an à la lutte contre le sida dans le monde. C'est cet argent-là, ces moyens-là que nous devons trouver et par notre mobilisation permettre de les affecter.
In spite of the latest advances, the virus that causes AIDS remains a formidable enemy due to its unprecedented ability to develop resistance to drugs. New medicines keep it under control, but they are neither available nor affordable for many. Experts also suspect a large number of unreported cases.
We know we're treating 19.5 million people, but there's another 17-odd million who need treatment today. And we haven't found those people. Many of them are in regions of the world such as West Africa, Central Africa, Eastern Europe, Central Asia, that we haven't got to. So that's very concerning.
However, the conference heard many optimistic notes.
We are reaching the people in need. We are saving lives because it's not only about treatment, but ultimately change the screening.
Among the highlights is the recent news about the 10-year-old South African child born with HIV. After only a year of treatment, the child has been virus-free for more than 8 years. Citing other similar cases, as well as the promising vaccines being developed, experts say the scales may finally be tipped against the disease that so far has killed about 35 million people.
Dangote Tomato Factory in Kano State has come to the rescue of tomato farmers who suffer pre- and post-harvest losses due to wastage and storage difficulty. The factory, which was affected by a series of problems initially, has been set up to produce tomato paste for the Nigeria and Africa market. This report highlights the opportunities local farmers and the Nigerian market benefit from local tomato paste manufacturing industry.
Nigerian dishes. However, the country is still struggling to supply this important fruity veg, among other foods, to every citizen's dinner table. Around 40% of tomatoes produced in the country go to waste every year, causing massive losses to farmers and causing the country to spend $360 billion in the importation of tomato paste. The federal government in 2015 sought to make Nigeria a self-sufficient food producer by encouraging agricultural development. As a result, many followed the president's rallying call, "We must produce what we eat," and went back to the farms to produce more. Aliko Dangote, Africa's richest man, went back to his home state of Kano and established the region's biggest tomato processing factory. Abdul Karim Kaita is the managing director of the factory.
Nigeria is the largest tomato importer in Africa and also the second largest producers of tomato in Africa after Egypt. But we don't have processing plant. That is a plant that will process fresh tomato into tomato concentrate. All we have are the packaging companies. They import the tomato concentrate and then dilute it and then package it into small cans and sachets.
The $20 million facility was set up to compete with cheap imports from China. Through its partnership with the Rockefeller Foundation, the tomato factory was able to achieve the required volume to start processing. The Rockefeller Foundation assisted in aggregating farmers seamlessly to bring tomatoes to the factory. In 2015, the factory was launched, but not for long.
First of all, we had this issue, security issues in the country, and the Italian company that supplied the equipment refused to come for the erection. So that took us almost 1 year without anything. The equipments have arrived from Italy. Eventually, we have to get a company from South Africa to come and do the installation. And by the time we commenced, we completed the installation. We want to also do the test running. Then there was this scare of Ebola fever in Nigeria. And then the Italians too backed out. They said, no, it's health reasons they cannot come. So that delayed us another year again. So, and not until last year, March, and we are ready for production. Commissioning was done, but we started running for barely 2 weeks. Then there was this infection of the tomato farms by a pest called Tuta absoluta.
But its commitment to better farmers' lives still stands.
There's what is called the pre-harvest loss. And that starts from the nursery point of view, when the farmer tries to grow the seeds in the open land. And in that practice too, the farmer loses almost 50% of the seeds because There's no modern technique. So in that segment, we are trying to set up greenhouses to grow the tomato seed into good, healthy seedling, which the farmer can easily buy and just go and plant, and is sure of getting 99% germination and more yield per plant and per hectare. We have tested these seedlings, the hybrid seeds. They've seen the yield factor is more than 4 times what they are getting now on the same piece of land.
For 2 seasons since its launch, Dangote factory has collected 2,150 metric tons of tomatoes from farmers here in Kano. This lifts a heavy burden of tomato glut from farmers and encourages them to produce more. It also provides an alternative market to farmers.
With that, we conclude the news roundup for this week. Thank you for being part of the program. I'm Tunde Alabi. Enjoy the rest of your week. Bye.
As part of our continued efforts to reach the African and other ethnic communities in the United Kingdom with greater impacts and create the platform to hear your silent and unheard views in this hugely growing community in the United Kingdom, our channel, Ben TV, presents to you another live current affairs television program. Our focus on the program is to review and discuss issues around the diaspora community in the UK. The program offers you that unrestricted voice on issues affecting you in the UK. Join us live every Monday at 10 a.m. to 12 noon. Another business segment of Dialogue in Diaspora, 2 to 3 p.m. every Monday. But guess what? You can be part of the program. Just send us an email at bentelevisionuk@gmail.com. Dialogue in Diaspora, your voice, your opinion on our TV.